Good afternoon. Thanks everybody who joined us. Ukrainian Media Center Ukrinform continues its operation. It's day 237 of heroic resistance of the Ukrainian people against full-scale aggression, and we will talk about the consequences of the damages inflicted on our country within the last 24 hours. Unfortunately, Russians keep shelling our countries, keep striking with loitering drones and missiles. Today our speaker is Oleksandr Khorunzhiy, the press officer of the State Emergency Service of Ukraine. Mr. Oleksandr, what are the consequences of these strikes that we can talk about now? I greet everybody. I cannot say good afternoon because the enemy keeps shelling our territory. Our civilians, our military, their critical infrastructure installations suffered damages. There were 26 shellings in the 7 regions of Ukraine, mostly missile strikes in Mykolaiv region, Dnipropetrovsk, Zaporizhzhia region, Kyiv. There were also loitering drone strikes in Dnipropetrovsk, Zhytomyr, and Zaporizhzhia regions. Donetsk and Kharkiv regions were under shellings too. The consequences of these terroristic actions by the Russian Federation resulted in death of 5 persons, I mean within the last 24 hours, and 5 more injured. 14 installations damaged in total, out of them 5 energy infrastructure installations, fuel stations, other civil infrastructure objects, including children's playgrounds. I want to stop on the consequences of these shellings. Let's start with Kyiv. Today in the morning, October 18, one of the critical energy infrastructure object suffered damage due to missile strike with further fire, which was further localized by a unit of a State Emergency Service of Ukraine. The area of fire was around 1,400 square meters. And respectively, during the clearing of the detritus, we found three bodies of the people, 2 of them dead and 1 injured. More than 120 personnel were operating in the area, along with 25 pieces of material. The work is still in progress there. The debris is being cleared in the area. In other region, it's Dnipropetrovsk region, specifically the city of Dnipro, suffered 3 missile strikes in the morning. Again, they were targeted at the objects of critical infrastructure with further fires. In 2 of them, the fire was extinguished for the time being. The strikes resulted in the disconnection of certain districts of Dnipro from electricity supply, along with Sinelnikovo, Vasilkivsky, and Rozdory towns. And another place targeted today by a loitering drone was in the city of Kryvyi Rih. Fortunately, there were no damage and no casualties. I want to also mention the damage inflicted on 16 multi-story buildings in Dnipro. Now the personnel of the emergency service is investigating the sites to help the people. The next region under strike was Zaporizhzhia region. The missile strike hit the vegetable base. The roof of the building was damaged with no casualties, fortunately. Another region is the Mykolaiv region. Mykolaiv is under constant shelling by Russian Federation. In the night, by preliminary information with S-300 rockets. An object of critical infrastructure was targeted, and one of the Mykolaiv districts was disconnected from electricity supply, and there was another strike after an hour, which targeted the multi-story residential buildings, pump station, and other civil infrastructure objects, which resulted in the death of one person. The units of State Emergency Service was clearing the area, clearing the debris and extinguishing the fire in the area. The next region is Zhytomyr region. There were 2 strikes with loitering drones in the morning, which targeted the objects of energy infrastructure. The water and electricity supply in the city and region is unstable. The strike resulted in fire, which was extinguished by more than 20 rescue personnel was involved in extinguishing of the fire. Also, we have Donetsk region suffering multiple damage, specifically in the town of Kurakhova. An object of energy infrastructure was targeted, and the water and electricity supply is unstable in the area. We have information on the we don't have yet information on the casualties, so these are the consequences of the strikes within the last 24 hours. I need to mention that we have the rescue personnel operating in all the areas and all the damaged sites. We have 24 generators connected to the social objects like hospitals and other objects of civil infrastructure. Mr. Oleksandr, what are the consequences of yesterday's strikes on the capital by the loitering drones? Are the rescue works still in progress, or are they over? The works are almost over. I need to remind you that we had a number of strikes on the capital yesterday. There was an administrative building in Shevchenkivsky district, the fire on the 10th floor, with the partial destruction of the 8th to 10th floor. No casualties on this installation. Another fire erupted on the roof of the 10-story office building, which was extinguished. And everybody knows this case in the Shevchenkivsky district. There was a missile strike on the residential building. The floors from 1 to 4th were destroyed, with a number of fire sites which were extinguished. The rescuers saved 24 people. We have 5 key casualties, out of which 2 are the rescue personnel. We deblocked the bodies of 4 people. We have 5 victims there, of which 3 were women. Dear colleagues, your questions. Radio Freedom. Getting back to today's challenge of the left bank, this critical infrastructure object for the time of the strike, which number of people were there, and as to the residential buildings in the area, did they suffer any damage? What's the situation there? What is the possible number of casualties and injured, and is the fire completely extinguished in the area of that you mentioned, 1,400 square meters? Yeah, I will tell you at once that the fire was extinguished at 11:40, completely extinguished. As to the number of people who were there at the moment, I don't have exact figures now, so I don't have this information. I cannot tell you for sure, but I know for sure that there were casualties. We know about 2 casualties for the time being, and another person was pulled from under the detritus. And another question about the residential buildings nearby. We don't have any information about the residential buildings in the area, so that there were no buildings destroyed and damaged. Well, maybe they had some broken windows, but that's all we know for the time being, because the nearest buildings are on a pretty far distance from that site. As to the electricity supply, mayor of the city already mentioned it, that the electricity supply on the left bank is unstable. And other questions? Oleksandr, Ukrinform, I have a question in general about this situation. Do the rescuers cope with this situation? Do you have enough personnel? And yesterday there was information about 2 rescuers injured. I will tell you at once that their condition is satisfactory. They had medical aid provided to them immediately. Please remind me the second question. Is the rescue personnel sufficient to mitigate the consequences of the strikes? On a daily basis, we have about 7,000 rescuers on duty who are ready to fulfill their duties in all areas, and in fact we don't have such problems which would impede us from fulfilling our mission. And this number, 7,000 rescuers, it may be increased depending on the load and on the challenges we face. Besides, depending on the tasks that we face, for example, in Kharkiv region, there was a joint unit engaged in rebuilding the infrastructure. So the unit comprised rescuers specializing in different fields like demining, reconstruction works, rescuing works, engineering works, and so on and so forth. And I want to tell you that we are ready for any challenges. We are not scared. We're not scared of these innuendos by Russian Federation, the use of missiles or drones. I haven't heard any complaints from any single rescuer. Everybody clenches their fists and teeth and repel the attack of Russian aggression. And we will work on rebuilding our infrastructure and timely reaction to the situation. Maybe you have the statistics. Maybe you have the statistics on how much rescuers were injured or casualties among rescuers from 24 February. We have 45 rescuers perished from 24 February. As to the injured, more than 100 were injured within this period. Mr. Oleksandr, we see that Russian strategy now is hitting us with rockets and loitering drones. You see the consequences of such strikes. What are your conclusions as to their power, destructive power? If we compare loitering drones and missiles, so the missile strikes are way more powerful in terms of destruction, and that's clear because it's more of an explosive, they carry more explosive agent. But the threat posed by loitering drones, Shaheds as they call them, they pose significant threat because it's many of them. They show themselves in unexpected areas, so we can say that their destructive potential is way lower, but they compensate it with numbers, so we have to react to both to missile strikes and to drone strikes at the same time. Thank you, dear colleagues, Any questions? No questions? Oh, all right. Those two who perished today, are they the workers of this critical infrastructure installation? Yes, yes, they are. I will remind you, we had Oleksandr Khorunzhiy, press officer for State Emergency Service in Ukraine. Thanks, everybody. Glory to Ukraine. Together to the victory. Glory to the heroes. Together to the victory.